Slow West is a Western film about a 16-year-old Scottish kid who comes to the American West in search of a woman, the love of his life, who was forced to flee to America with her father after a mishap in Scotland. He is quickly joined by a mysterious and lone outlaw who, in exchange for a certain amount of money, promises to protect and guide him so he can get safely to his destination. Unbeknownst to them at first, they are being pursued along the way by some quite shady characters, which will inevitably put the lives of everyone involved in danger. What stuck with me most and what I remembered most fondly about this film after I saw it the first time about half a year ago was how beautiful it is. It is by far definitely one of the best looking films of this year so far, and how great the soundtrack is. And it's no wonder if we consider that first-time director John McLean has a bachelor's degree in drawing and painting, so the man really knows what he's doing visually, there's no doubt about that. And also he has worked delivering cars throughout the United States, and he says that having traveled a lot actually made him decide to want to do a western. So you can really tell that this is a person who knows and who is very familiar with these types of landscapes. The riveting soundtrack was composed by Jed Kurzel, who also worked on the horror film The Babadook and the newest adaptation of the famous Shakespearean tragedy Macbeth, on which he collaborated on with his brother. Just think about that, a horror film, a western, and a Shakespearean tragedy. Now say what you will about all of these films, but they all have excellent soundtracks. Now there's some real talent right there if you ask me. And I think it's this combination of artistry between cinematography and music that they managed to bring to the western genre something that was like a fresh outlook, a fresh worldview in a way. Where yes, you have your typical environment of late 19th century American Wild West with all of its stunning landscapes and also all of its gritty and shady inhabitants. But it's not ugly and it's not dirty, it's quite beautiful like I mentioned. It's like, this is the type of place where if you knew you had to die, and of course we all do, but this is probably the nicest place to do it in, honestly. At least that's how it seems the way it's presented in the film. And it's also not that heavily romanticized and idealized version of this world we are presented here. Like you would have in those old school John Wayne films. I guess this is not that type of story, at least not until the very end, where there's an actual bad or good, an actual right or wrong. No, everyone has their own objectives, and trust me, they stand by those objectives no matter what. Whether they be related to fame, fortune, love, or just pure survival. And it's really cool because it makes these characters very relatable. Nobody is really trying to be a hero here in any way, at least not in any traditional sense. Instead of the good, the bad, and the ugly, this is more like the goody two-shoes, the badass, and the assholes. It's also a world where there are definitely consequences. This is not like one of those classic Clint Eastwood type westerns, which are great by the way, but it's really weird when just under a millisecond he manages to cock his gun and just shoot 4 guys, no fucks given. No, here when someone gets shot, whether it be a side character or a main character, it could be anybody, it's bloody and it's violent and it's painful, it's exactly how it should be. Slow West does something which basically any good movie should do, is to create that sense that your characters are not invincible or even invulnerable. Even though you don't find out a whole lot about any of these characters, you do find out just the right amount to make you realize that each and every character's death can cause and does cause massive changes, at least to the others around them. And on the other hand, this film, due to its cinematography and soundtrack, as I mentioned in the beginning, is mesmerizingly atmospheric. And that's awesome. That's what will stick with you after the film. These characters, they're alright, they're fine, everyone does a good job, but they're not particularly anything special, they're not very memorable. I guess the only one who truly stood out to me was, of course, Michael Fassbender, and I think this guy must be some sort of genius, because he does these very small gestures which just, I don't know, stick with you. They just remain with you after the film. And I don't know how he does it. I guess it really goes to show you what a great actor truly is. So I guess that's it really. It's a great movie, but not because of its story necessarily. Its story is not anything unusual. It's more the craftsmanship. So fuck yeah, I would recommend it, and that's it. Plain and simple. This was a pretty easy review to make, actually.